So, Bob, today we are talking about cruise ship time machine. What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
yeah, I'm having a bit of fun with that one. So the whole concept here is that a lot of places in the world look a lot different now than they did 40 or 50 years ago. So how do we get back to that?
Very interesting. This is on Dream Travel Share Unpacked.
If you'd like to receive an email version of today's show, along with our weekly travel opportunities, click on the link below to join our mailing list. We promise to only send you one email a week every Friday. You can unsubscribe at any time, and we won't share your email address with anyone else.
Okay, so how do we get back to the Caribbean and the Mediterranean like we were a decade ago?
Well, I guess there's a few things you can do. The first one would be is to fly somewhere really remote, right? Like so, fly to some low latitude airport and then get on a little puddle jumper and go somewhere else. Most people don't really want to do that,
Okay.
and so there's some of our vendors that do a pretty good job of this. And what I mean by this is that you fly somewhere. Again, most of our clients, of course, cruise clients, and so you fly somewhere and then you end up maybe with bookend, what I'm going to call bookend ports, and you go a whole bunch of fairly unusual places in between.
Can you give me an example of this?
Yeah, sure. So the two busiest cruise markets really in the whole world would be the Caribbean, of course, and the Mediterranean. And so if we start with the Caribbean, so the big ports there outside of Florida. So Florida, there's multiple ports, of course, but it would be places like San Juan, Puerto Rico is an awful big port, and there's some in Barbados, there's some in Grand Cayman, and so these are places where these are where the mega ships show up, right? So 5,000 person ships, and there might be five of them in, right, or something like
Yeah.
that. And in the Mediterranean, again, you spend lots of time in the Mediterranean, so you've been to a lot of these ports. So it's Rome, Barcelona, Athens, Istanbul is coming along fairly quickly now, Venice. Some of the ones in southern France, either Marseille or Monte Carlo, even though that's not southern France. Um, well, it's kind of southern France. So these are the great big ports. This is where a lot of the cruise ships end up. And so this is creating some of the things we're seeing now about over tourism. It's because there's way too many people in these places.
Okay, got it. So, what we're talking about for the time machine, what would be some good ports that we maybe should look for?
Yeah, and so I mean, where this all came up is that in June, so a couple of months ago, Sue and I were in the Mediterranean, in the Western Med, with Sea Cloud, and I think I've mentioned this a little bit before, but so we went from Monte Carlo to Rome over the course of a week, and so that section of Western Mediterranean, Sue and I've been to about a million times. And so the ports you would normally visit if you're going, say, Rome to Barcelona, you would stop in Naples and Livorno for Florence and Pisa. You might stop again in southern France or somewhere, Monte Carlo or Nice, Marseille, those sort of places, Majorca on the Spanish side. So there's all these different places. So it struck me as so when we were invited to go on Sea Cloud, I said, great, always happy to experience a brand new product. But I thought, okay, do I really need to go back to the Western Med? Because it's one of those places where we've been so many times, we've been to every port of call. We said, okay, what possibly could be new? And what we learned was there's actually quite a bit new. So, and what I mean by that is we boarded in Monte Carlo and we disembarked in Rome, and it took us a week to get between the two. And if you get out a map, you'll realize this is not far. So, a lot of cruise ships will leave Rome and be Monte Carlo will be the first port of call the next day.
Yeah.
And we visited five or six different places in between Monte Carlo and Rome, places you've never heard of. We visited a whole bunch of places in Corsica and Sardinia, and I won't attempt to repeat them all, of course, because they're all in Spanish and Italian. But
Yeah.
these are ports that I've never even heard of.
Is there anything to do with these ports if you've never heard of them? What is
Yeah,
there to
yeah,
do in each?
yeah. So that's a great question, and I think for sure if you like the idea of cruise ship ports with jewelry shops and t-shirt shops that are generally owned by the cruise lines, oddly enough, the that this might not work for you.
Okay.
But if you want to go, so for example, our first port of call was in Calvi, Corsica. And if you've never been to Corsica, you really need to go. It's spectacular. And we went e-biking. And in a different port of call, we went sea kayaking. And for the folks that maybe didn't want to be out and doing stuff, there were still, if you want to go shopping or you want to engage with local people, those are still there. It's just small sort of mom and pop businesses as opposed to the big duty-free store at the end of the pier.
Well, if I can throw in that I have less about 30 sleeps and I get to experience sea cloud in a very, very short time. And I think one of the reasons why I am so excited is I've been all around, but
Yeah.
there's not one stop I have ever been to. So just reaffirming what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm just excited to see some different spots. And it's usually the smaller, more intimate locations that I really get excited about.
Yeah, and I mean, by way of an example, so that you won't be going to this place, but you were in Europe in the spring, so a few months ago, and
Yeah.
you were telling me about you were coming or going from Barcelona, if I remember, and you ended up in Carcassonne in France.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's a place a lot of people have not even heard of Carcassonne,
Yeah.
and again, it's in the southern France. It's maybe a 3 hour drive from Barcelona. I'm going by memory a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what an incredible place that is. And so there are some day trippers that come in for sure. It's not like it's completely undiscovered, but there's stuff to do there that for
Mhm.
people that have maybe been to France and Spain, because it's kind of right on the border there, uh, a number of times, what an interesting place to stop over.
Just full of just there's so many places in between these stops, and this sea cloud, honestly, there some of their itineraries I'm pretty excited about just
Yeah.
because they're unique places that you've maybe never heard of.
Yeah.
So
And so you get to
go ahead.
do again, you get to interface with real people, not the people that just work in the cruise ship, the jewelry stores that are owned by the cruise ship. And, mom and pop businesses and farm to table cuisine and small family run vineyards, right? So we visited a vineyard that had been in the family for several hundred years, which of course something we just don't have in North America, right? Which is
Yeah.
pretty cool as well.
So what are we going to tell our clients if they want to visit the Caribbean and the Med
Yeah.
on this kind of ship, cruise ship?
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a few things you can do, right? So I mean, we talked a little bit about Sea Cloud just because it's most recent in my memory, of course, and you're going on shortly.
Hmm.
But amongst the various cruise lines, if you can look for, if you want to remedy this whole thing, and this is again dealing partly with the over tourism stuff as well, you can do a couple of things. You can do what Sea Cloud does quite well, which is pick an itinerary that's got bookend ports again, so that they're easy for you to get to by air. And then if you haven't heard of a whole bunch of the ports in between, that's a good thing. You can even do this in Alaska, right? So people look at Alaska and they think, oh, okay, Juneau, Ketchikan, Skagway, which for sure, if you're traveling on a mega ship, that's where you're going. But if you travel on some of the smaller ships, you'll end up in some of the more remote ports. And again, this is one way to do it. The other thing you can look at is itineraries that have either extended stays, so you don't leave until 9 or 10 at night, or maybe overnight stays, because these places look a lot different after 5 or 6 in the afternoon when the cruise ships leave, than they do in the heat of the day. And of course, for big ports, the ones that might have 3, 4, 5 cruise ships in a single day, you definitely want to be there when all those ships aren't there.
What about a place like the Greek islands?
Yeah, I think again, Greece is a very popular cruise ship destination, of course.
Mhm.
All the cruise lines have some presence in the Aegean Sea, so they generally go in Greece and Turkey, sometimes Italy and Croatia. And those are great itineraries. If you're stopping in Santorini or you're stopping in Mykonos, which are the two most popular ports there, and there's a reason these places are popular. Santorini is incredibly scenic. The problem is if you if you've seen people waiting, there's a gondola. If you've not been to Santorini before, it's in the caldera of a volcano that blew its top. So steep hills, and that's where you see all the blue and white things built right into the buildings built right into the seaside. It's fantastic. It's incredibly scenic. The problem is that people go up the gondola to get from the jetty where the ship, because there's no wharf there for the cruise ship, so they have to anchor. They take their passengers ashore. They all line up for the gondola. There's sometimes hundreds or even thousands of people on that line.
Ooh.
And then you get up to Thera. It's the little town at the top there in Santorini. and it's completely overrun. So I mean, I've been there when there's no cruise ships there, and it's charming and scenic and lovely. Most days there's 4 or 5 cruise ships there, literally tens of thousands of passengers. It's a little bit untasteful. So, in my mind, if you want to really see the Greek islands, you need to pick somewhere different. And so you need to look at an itinerary that has some different ports. And maybe Santorini is one of those bucket list places for you. So great. Pick an itinerary that's got Santorini on it. Know in advance you're going to be standing in a line with several hundred other people to get up the gondola. And then
Mhm.
maybe your other port stops will be a little bit more authentic and a little bit more, you get to meet some more of the real local Greek people.
All great information. So, what are we talking about next week on Dream Travel Share Unpacked?
Yeah, it's one that we're calling 18 Summers. And spoiler alert, so Sue and I had our second grandson a few weeks ago, so which is very exciting. So it got us to thinking just about how we're going to interface with him and his older brother and how that might relate to travel.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very interested in that one.
All right, we'll see you then.
Okay, bye for now.
If you enjoyed this video blog, it really helps us when you like or better yet subscribe to our channel so that we know the best content to produce for you. If you want to book a cruise or package land vacation, then we'd love to help you out. We know the products and destinations very well, and we can always get you something not available on direct bookings. Our coordinates are in the notes below. Also, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, you get one email a week every Friday with some commentary and some different deals that we're seeing in the marketplace. We don't share your information with anyone else, and if you decide it's not for you, then we're sorry to see you go, but there's an unsubscribe button at the bottom of every email. See you next time.